All right, so welcome everyone that's entering for our webinar today. Lots of seats in here. Come on in. Everybody's coming in now. Got a good crowd this afternoon. And it'll be well worth it too once everybody gets in here and gets situated. Welcome. All right, I'm just going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center with Clark University webinar series. This is the ABCs of Returning Safely to Work. It is a 3-episode webinar series, and it is presented to you all today by safety trainers and MassMEP. I am Haley Steele. I'm the marketing coordinator with MassMEP, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. We also have behind the scenes from MassMEP, our marketing director, Christy Grignon, and our information technology manager, Matt Healy. They work behind the scenes and they keep things moving for us. And our panelists today are Rich Cheney, who is the regional director of the MSBDC Central Office out of Clark University, and Darcy Cook, who is the owner of Cook Professional Resources, which we know as Safety Trainers. So they will be your panelists today. We just want to thank everyone for joining us. As you can see, your mics are muted, but you will be able to engage with us throughout the webinar this afternoon. There will be polls. We will have the chat and the Q&A. For those of you that may be new to using Zoom, on the bottom, you should have an option there for a Q&A button and for a chat button. You'll click on those. We usually say that to use the chat option, it's a nice place for you to share with those that are in the webinar some ideas or thoughts and back and forth. And then if you have questions, and if you could, please put all of your questions in the Q&A box as they come up. So we will be happy to jump in and answer them. Darcy and I will go back and forth so we can make sure that the questions get answered for you. The polls that we have, they will pop up throughout the webinar this afternoon. They're on a little bit of a time limit, and once everybody has answered those, we close them, and then we will post the results. This is a way for Darcy to be able to use the results in conjunction with the webinar content that she has. It provides her a little bit of insight information on you, the audience, and what it is you're looking for today. We do have an hour set aside for the webinar. We feel it's plenty of time for the content, but we will be respectful of your time. And if there are questions that are left at the end that we haven't been able to answer, we will send a response directly to the email that is connected to that question. So you all registered, so we have your email and we can send it back to you. Upon completion of the series, which will be after Wednesday, we will be making the videos available through a private link. We do understand that everyone is anxious to receive this information while it's still fresh, but we do ask if you can be patient with us. It does take a little bit of time to edit and produce the videos for your viewing quality, and then the link will be emailed again to the address that you used upon your registration. So we're going to start. I'm going to turn it over to Rich Cheney, who's going to introduce the SBDC, and then he'll be happy to hand it off to Darcy. So Rich, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Haley. I assume I'm unmuted. So again, thank you for the introduction. So first of all, many, many thanks to Haley and to Christy and to Matt and to the MassMEP for doing this series. This is an important series, and I think that it couldn't come at a better time, more timely time to deliver the series. Also, many thanks to my colleague, Cheryl Miller, who's not only a senior business advisor, but also our training director at the central office here at Clark University, and her efforts, along with Darcy and the people at MassMEP, should be acknowledged. And of course, finally, to Darcy Cook, who are doing this seminar series. I've met with Darcy a number of times in our office with her business, and I know she's extremely good and knowledgeable about this, and a very important, timely subject. So just really briefly, the way of a little background, the Small Business Development Center at Clark University is actually one of 5 centers in the state of Massachusetts. The other 4 are in Pittsfield, out in the western part of the state, Springfield, up in Salem, and down in Fall River. We have 2 other smaller offices, more specific offices dealing with procurement, what we call our PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And then we have another office, one person that deals entirely with a government contract. We also do all of the small business innovation research work. That these are grants that come out of the federal government. We do all that work as well in our office. The Small Business Development Center at Clark actually has a pretty long background. We've been around for over 40 years. And that goes a long, long ways. In fact, the Small Business Development Centers in the country really started in the late 80s. So the one in Clark has a long history and a very good history. We have right now 4 advisors working for us, 3 senior business advisors, one who just hired who's a grad student. We also have some grad students. So we do a lot of financial planning work for our clients. What we offer are confidential and comprehensive counseling and advice to small business owners and small business owner wannabe. Sometimes we refer to them as nascent entrepreneurs. These are folks that are interested in opening a business and they come to us for some help on how to get that started. We typically will see approximately anywhere from $16 to $30 million a year of capital formation. We don't make loans, but we help people get loans. And we have a very strong relationship with over 20 lenders throughout the state. And I think one of the hallmarks of what we do and do very well is financial modeling for our clients. We don't make up the numbers. We use the numbers that our clients provide for us, but we'll put them in a template that are very well received by lenders, which we've developed over the years. This goes back a number of years now. We see anywhere from 600 to 900 people a year. We'll do close to 3,000 hours of counseling. And most importantly, our work is all free. Our services are not only comprehensive and confidential, but they're free of charge to our clients. So what I say to most people is if you've paid your taxes, we actually owe you time in our office. So we encourage people who are attending this webinar or subsequent webinars to, if you need help, by all means, seek us out. Just real briefly, and again, in some sort of interesting statistics, about 67% of people who live in the United States will at some point in their life actually open a business. We're not referring to the lemonade stand that you opened as a young kid, or maybe the paper route you had. We're talking about a going concern, and a vast majority of people in this country will take advantage of our capitalistic system. So again, this is a great opportunity for people who have been closed as a result of COVID-19 and are coming back out and able to open their business through phase 3 in the state of Massachusetts. Like clearly, we have to take those business owners to be careful in doing it the right way. And obviously, Darcy Cook and safety trainers will provide that information today and tomorrow and on Wednesday. So again, thanks to Darcy and thanks to MassMEP and Cheryl and all the other folks for making this possible. So I'll give this back now to Darcy because she actually has the goods, and more important, you listen to her than you listen to me. So best of luck to you all and have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Here we go. Alrighty. First thing, I want to just kind of map out what the expectation is for this 1 hour. We're delivering 3 one-hour seminars. You should have a camera to snap pictures of screens if you want to get busy immediately. You can, or should be taking notes along the way. My goal is we've been in this COVID now for several months and this pandemic. And so for some of you, you've started putting together your plan. Maybe some of you haven't started at all. And then there are those of you who think that your plan is good, but you're here just to check and make sure that you've gotten all the boxes checked. So I call that a 1, a 3, and a 5. So if you haven't started yet, don't worry about it. Over the next 3 days, you're going to know exactly how to start putting pen to paper. If you're a 3, meaning you've started to build this and you want to make sure that you get things right, or you need to make some edits, or what are you missing, you're going to hear all about it in the next 3 days, and you're going to know exactly what your next steps are going to be. And for those of you who are here just making sure that you haven't missed anything, good for you. You're going to be able to be really confident, and these 3 days are up, that you guys have put something together that you can use long term. So putting this plan together, I think the first thing that you need to understand is that this is going to be here forever. It might not be called COVID-19 control plan, back to work practices under the state of Massachusetts. What's going to happen is these concepts, the documents that you're creating are going to convert themselves. Some of you might be familiar with the bloodborne pathogen standard. Some of you might come from a healthcare background where they have infectious control plans. I guarantee you that these control plans that you're writing now for the pandemic, all you're going to do is change the title on it. The regulators are now going to require general industries like you and I, who operate companies and businesses, to have something in writing on infectious control, bloodborne pathogens. How are we protecting our workers and our employees? So you'll see that these poll questions are going to be popping up throughout the webinar. Please answer those, because that helps also to give me, good perspective. It looks like many of you have already gotten your social distancing, which is probably the easiest one to put in place. Keep everyone 6 feet apart as best as you possibly can. And if you can keep people out of the same building, even better. Now, the truth is we can't operate out of the same building. In a lot of cases, we all have to actually get back to business and get in the same physical space. So we see some of you taking temperatures along the way. We're going to address some of these issues so you can kind of get a gauge whether you know how to continue to do that or not. First thing is, this is not Darcy Cook's made up opinion. I actually did all the work for you. I have read and continue to read hours every single day, EPA, DPH, Massachusetts regulations, OSHA, MSHA, Department of Public Health. I put it all together. I sort through it. Someone writes it one way over here. Someone else writes it another way over here. I sort it. I stack it. I get verification. We send emails to the state saying this doesn't make any sense. Can you give me a definition? So what I want you to know is I've done the groundwork for you, and now I'm going to present to you in an organized fashion what I know to be true as of today. Now, I know the governor's talking a few minutes ago. We might see a new change. I'm going to update you on the changes that I know of. You'll see that all of the cited resources are coming from the people who are basically calling the shots right now. So my first question to you is that you need to have someone doing what I'm doing in your company. How are you going to stay up to date? Are you going to listen to the governor every day at 12 to 1? Are you partnered with SBDAP? Are you partnered with MassMEP? Are you partnered with AIM HR Solutions? Who's sending you emails? What webinars are you going to continue to go on? Are you clicking on the CDC's website? How are you going to stay up to speed with all of these changes? Now, several months ago, we were changing on a daily, sometimes even on an hourly basis. Now it's slowed down a little bit. But as we're in phase 3, we do see new directives coming out from Massachusetts. So here's the 2 that I want to draw your attention to. If you are unfamiliar, if you did not know that the governor has put a new travel ban out, and this travel ban is going to affect all of you whose employees are going on vacation. This is also going to affect you if your employees travel for business, not only in the United States, but of course, international travel. But I think the one that you're going to find most interesting is the impact of traveling outside of New England, and what does that mean for you and your organization. So please Google search it and look it up. There's some reciprocity that's happening within the New England states, meaning if I go to New Hampshire or Rhode Island and I come back to Massachusetts and I am a Massachusetts resident, I do not need to quarantine for 14 days. But if I go there on non-work related, non-essential business, i.e. vacationing, and I come back, I'm still okay. If you go outside of New England on vacation, outside of New England on non-essential business, now things are changing. So you need to look into that. The other thing is the CDC just posted new recommendations. Now, the CDC is not law. However, it's really where we're taking our directive and our guidance. Let's call it best practices. Right now, we're getting our best practices under this pandemic from the CDC. And the CDC has just posted that in terms of the back to work protocols and being without fever medication, it's always been 72 hours fever free with no medication. Now they've changed that. They've actually dropped it down to 24 hours. Now they also changed some things around quarantine. And although this probably will confuse some of you, you got to go and actually read the details. So there is a 14-day quarantine that does still exist, but that only exists under people who have been assumed that you might have come in contact with someone who has COVID-19. They have lowered the quarantine period for those of you who are showing symptoms or have gone through the process of being and testing positive to a 10-day quarantine. So this is something you need to write down and jot down to follow up with after this webinar so you clearly understand it. There are lots of resources out there right now, but I think an important resource is still that you understand if you have one employee, if you are a sole proprietor and you're on this as a sole proprietor, OSHA does not govern you. But if you have one employee and you are a business who has never really had to kind of step up your game when it comes to OSHA compliance, I can tell you now that you need to be reading and looking at what OSHA compliance is saying about your business and about your industry related to what's happening with the COVID-19, the pandemic. So my first question here is, do you have, again, a COVID-19 coordinator, infectious control coordinator? What do you can call this person anything you want, compliance officer, but you've got to have someone who's going to take the lead on it and look into these. This is a free public published document. Everything OSHA does is free. They have updated it as of last month with more details of what they expect you and I as companies, business owners, on what we should be doing during a pandemic relating to protecting our employees. So as a reminder, OSHA is here to protect your employees, not your customers, not your vendors, not your visitors, not your guests. They only care about what are you doing to keep your employees safe. Poster compliance is going to be a big deal. I joke about it, but right now your businesses should look like a 13-year-old girl's bedroom. You should have signs everywhere, screenings, PPE, hand washing, maximum limitations on occupancy, social distancing on the floor, markings. Right now, you've got a lot of things. Now, we're going to talk about signage. It doesn't have to be super fancy. A lot of this stuff you can get for free on all of these websites and links that will be in this presentation. So I see that a lot of you have already been named. I bet you if we took another poll that says, all of you who are on this, are you the person that's been chosen to be responsible for it? And all of you probably would, yep, that's why I'm here, Darcy, because I've been chosen to be responsible for this. For those of you who haven't chosen someone, you've got to pick someone or else you're going to be left behind, and your risks associated with liability and potentially getting COVID-19 in your facility. I mean, the reason you're here and the reason that everyone's doing all this work is to decrease the likelihood of it happening in your facility. None of us want to shut down our business once we just got it up and running and shut it all back down again and have to start all over in the process. We definitely don't want fines and citations attached to those either. Now, we're going to talk about the hierarchy right now. Right now, if you are going to get a citation or an investigation, how is that going to happen to your small business? Well, an employee is going to call your local health department. A visitor, vendor, guest, or the general public can also call the local health department. That gets escalated up to the Department of Labor. That gets escalated up to OSHA. So there's kind of this hierarchy of communication. Now, keep in mind, your employees can call OSHA anytime they want. They do not have to start at the bottom. They can pick up the phone and let OSHA know that they feel like you are not doing enough or you're not being compliant to keep them safe and healthy in the workplace, and that could trigger an investigation. Right now, with everything being so busy, that might be a phone call, that might be a letter. It might not be them physically showing up. But I can guarantee you this, if you have 2 or more people who test positive in your facility and we can show that it's work related, they were on the same shift, they were in the same department, and that it didn't happen outside of work, you're probably going to get a phone call, a letter, and or a visit, right? That's definitely going to be happening. Not to mention, if you have 2 employees in your company that catch COVID-19, this is now called an OSHA recordable. Some of you might never have had to do OSHA logs because your business is so small and low high risk. But at the point where you guys have 2 people who are tested positive, that's going to change your record keeping and reporting. So you have to understand what that's going to look like. Now, we're not going to tell anyone if anybody's been infected here, but if someone's been infected in your business, what you need to understand is the process that has to happen around that, the contact tracing, the disinfecting and cleaning that needs to happen, the rules under HR and quarantine. So if you are not rock solid and comfortable with those three categories, if I were to test positive in your building right now, if you're not comfortable in the HR umbrella about sending me home and how am I getting paid and what you can and can't do, disinfecting and cleaning responsibilities, and what you have to do for contact tracing, you need to understand that those are important pieces to this puzzle. This page has been up for a few minutes, and so isn't the next one that I'm going to put up. Hold on, almost. These are all the OSHA standards that apply to you if you have one business. Now, what the good thing is you don't have to go read the OSHA book. The OSHA book, by the way, is this thick for your company. All right, it's this thick. And my job is to help you rip all the pages out that don't apply to you. And I've gotten it down to these 2 pages when we talk about the pandemic. So these 2 slides list everything that you need to know related to the pandemic. And in this webinar presentation, I'm going to start rapid fire. If I know for some of you, this is our first time meeting and you're like, boy, does Darcy talk fast. Not only do I talk fast, I'm that loud, really fast person once I get rolling with these concepts. So hold on, you guys. I have a lot of information I'm about to roll out to you in a very short window, because my goal is for you to go, we need to work on that. We've got that, right? 1, 3, or 5. You're going to just take a pulse check. You're going to evaluate your company right now to see where you are in each of these areas, okay? So quickly again on enforcement, here's a link. OSHA does not have a regulation written on the pandemic. There's no law written about pandemics. There's an infectious control one for healthcare, and there's bloodborne pathogens for your company, but there's nothing related around the pandemic. It doesn't mean that you can't get fined. You can still get fined under what's called the general duty clause. That means if your employees are at risk for getting sick or injured in your building, you must do something about it, period. And if you don't, then you can get fined under what's called this general duty clause. So everything I'm about to share with you is only focusing on one hazard in your building and one risk, and that's your employees catching COVID-19. Now, COVID-19, how does that happen? It's in my lungs. It's respiratory. It's in the fluids, coughing, sneezing, spitting. So if I cough and sneeze in your space, or I drool all over your desk, you wipe your hands on your desk and then you rub it in your face, you might catch COVID-19 from me. So the goal is here, every decision you're making is, how do you keep Darcy away from you? How do you keep Darcy from coughing and sneezing in your face? How do you keep Darcy from coughing and sneezing all over the workstation? And if she does cough and sneeze on the workstation, how are we cleaning that? And if she's sharing stuff with lots of people and she might be rubbing her nose and touching her face and then touching the printer or touching a piece of equipment, how do we make sure that that's getting clean so the next person isn't getting her germs? This is all about the invisible germs. So I'm going to share with you what your control plan, the sections, the chapters of your control plan are going to include. So number 1 is put your team together. Who's on your safety team, okay? Who's managing this? Number 2, we've already identified for you. I did the homework for you. We're talking about COVID-19. This is called the hierarchy of controls. What did we do when this first came? Many of our businesses shut down. Why? Because if we aren't in the same building together, if we're not working and we're home in our houses, that means nobody can catch COVID-19 from each other. That's not realistic. So we got to get back to work. So we get back to work, we get in the same building. They say, hey, can we substitute? What is substituting? That means let's not bring everyone back. Let's let some people work from home and some people can work in the building. How about if we work 2 shifts? We have like a 7 to 3 group, and then we have a 3 to 11 or 3 to 8 group, and we let some people work from home. You guys right now, the expectation is that you're creating flexible scheduling and decreasing how much contact you and I have in the same physical space. My office is here. I've got Cheryl's office on the other side of that wall. We phone call, we intercom, we text, we email, instead of getting up and going to each other's office, if that makes sense. Engineering controls. Some of you have had to build partitions, separate out desks. Some of you have had to get hand sanitizing stations that are automatic. Some of you have had to change out your whole online ordering going as paperless as you possibly can. Maybe you've had to change the HVAC ducts, putting in new HEPA filters. Those are all called engineering controls. So we're going to create a list of those for you. Warnings, just so you know, this is my addition. This is not OSHA's original hierarchy of controls. This is my version, and I added the yellow section in. Why? Because the state of Massachusetts is requiring you guys to put tons of posters up, hand washing posters, how not to catch germs, how to put your mask on, how do you take your mask off, social distance warning, the attestation for Massachusetts saying that you've completed everything. There's just a lot of postings that you guys need to have up. And then administrative controls, these are all your rules. It's your sandbox. I'm going to tell you what the minimum expectation is. If you want to make it stricter, so be it. But you've got to have rules. Visitors and guests, they have to have rules. When they can come, can't they come? Do you want them wearing a mask? Do you want them to wash their hands? Can they use your bathroom? Can't they use your bathroom? Drivers coming in. Are we going to be in a conference room? Are we eliminating that altogether? Rules in the kitchen. Are we recycling? Are we not recycling? We're definitely not ordering a pizza and sharing a pizza. Only packaged foods. We can't have open fresh fruits in the place. Other rules that you might have about numbers of people in the conference room. We have to eliminate some chairs. There's only 2 or 3 people around. You guys have to create a lot of rules right now about how your company is going to operate to keep distance and decrease the risk of you and I coming in contact with each other's germs. And then the last part, which is the thing that you see most, it's super visible, is PPE. Everyone's wearing a face covering. And that actually is your last line of defense. So for those of you who've got everyone wearing a face covering and you haven't put a plan together for engineering controls, postal compliance, administrative controls, that's why you're on this webinar. You're like, holy smokes, Darcy. If you're a 1, take a deep breath. I promise I'm going to show you. You're going to get this PowerPoint. You're going to go through it systematically, one step at a time, and write this down. If you're a 3, you're like, oh yeah, we're in it. I understand what she's saying, but you know what? I need you, Darcy, to give us some more information to help speed up this process. And for those of you guys who are in the 5 category, you're like, yep, we've been doing this for the last 3 months. We just want to see if we missed anything. So under record keeping, as I mentioned, if you guys have 2 cases, not 1, 2 cases, then I want you to really understand record keeping as it relates to OSHA compliance. If you have 1 case, then you have to obviously contact and connect with the Department of Public Health, and they're also going to give you some things that they want you to do in relationship to having 1 employee in your building that you'll need to work with them on. This is called your exposure control plan. An exposure control plan, if you have 1 employee who is doing any of the following, ready? If you have an employee who's cleaning, if you have an employee who's taking out trash, if you have an employee who's on your first aid team, if you have an employee that's doing landscaping, if you have an employee who's cleaning up the outside of your building, like, shoveling and snow blowing, all of those people might come in contact with blood or other potentially infectious material. So that's the key, other potentially infectious material. In your control plan, if you already have one of these, you're going to see how you can take this and just swap out information for what we're talking about in the pandemic, because every one of these bullet points is what's going to go into your control plan. Universal precautions, engineering, administration controls, what PPE are you having people, how are we cleaning the facility, hepatitis B vaccinations, pre and post follow-up for control for being around someone who has COVID-19. So this looks very similar to what we're asking you guys to do. So if you've got an exposure control plan, just revisit and build in your pandemic stuff. If you don't have one, then take this PowerPoint, go to these bullet points, and all you're going to do is add the statement next to it that basically says, this slide, what do we do with it related to control plan? So I just spelled it out right here for you, what you need to have, what you need to do, and putting it in place. Another area is your emergency action plan. So a pandemic is an emergency. We have been in a quick crisis mode when this whole thing came out, right? We sent people home, we shut down companies, we closed schools. I mean, that's an emergency. So in your company, you have to have an emergency action plan. You should already have one. If you don't, again, it's great. A blank slate is a great place to start because you can build it from scratch and not have to go back and edit and change it. If you've got an emergency action plan, you just need to go back to it and look at the areas that you have to update because we're in a pandemic. So what is that going to look like? It's going to look like, this is my visual. Hold it. It's going to look like this. So some of you might not know that you need to have a sick room or an isolation room. What does that mean, Darcy? Well, I come to work for today, and if I'm feeling not well, I shouldn't be at work, right? Because we're training everyone the signs and symptoms. And if you've been exposed or you've been told, we're telling you stay home, stay home, stay home. But let's just say none of that's happened. And I come to work. In the middle of my day, I start to feel ill. Not like I got a headache ill, not like I ate some bad food ill, right? Ill, like I'm showing signs and symptoms of COVID-19. What if I didn't drive my car? What if I took public transportation? What if I'm so ill, I can't, all of a sudden the symptoms come in, maybe I'm afraid, maybe I'm crying, maybe I'm upset. I can't leave your building. Where are you going to put me? You got to separate me from everyone else. You got to figure out what's going on. And when it comes time later for cleaning and disinfecting and contact tracing, we want to control all that. So this emergency action plan guide kind of walks you through, again, the pieces and the parts that you want to have in place under the pandemic. If you guys have a first aid team already established, go back and teach your first aid team that we do hands-only CPR. We're not blowing in anyone's mouths and doing compressions, okay? Not during a pandemic. That's not the expectation. Can you do it? Yes, but that's not what we're asking you to do in the workplace. The PPE that's in your first aid kits. So what if I do just get a basic cut? What if I do just sprain my ankle? That's not pandemic, but we're in a pandemic. So that means I'm gonna get closer than 6 feet to help Darcy with her sprained ankle or a cut hand. What does that look like? How are you training your first aid team with the right PPE and the right action steps to take? So your communication is going to be really important through these documents. Now, on the next one, we're talking about first aid. I kind of let it out of the bag already. What we're looking for you guys to do here is update your first aid. Do you guys have an AED? Put an AED on someone versus doing CPR. If you've got one, go quicker and faster. Update your first aid portable kits. Make sure you have face shields. Make sure you might have a gown. Make sure you have extra sets of gloves. We're going to need extra disposable masks because if they get wet or soiled or sweaty or dirty in the middle of the first aid procedure, I'm going to have to change all those out. So you want to be really thinking about your first aid plan as it currently exists. And if you're a small company, like less than 10 people, and you've never done anything related to first aid and had a plan around first aid, today's the day you guys are going to put one together. Just a one page. Keep it super simple. Like, here's our first aid kit. This is what's in it. Let's update what's going to be in it. Let's try to keep 6 feet, when we can. And if we have to get closer to Darcy, these are the rules that are going to apply associated with it. We know that getting PPE and getting equipment supplies right now is pretty hard, and that you might buy one thing today and not be able to get the same thing tomorrow or next week because the supply chain is really limited. So look at where you're getting your materials from. Talk to your supply chain about the long-term relationship. Can you continue to get this? Is this a short-term fix? You're going to have to move on and find something else very shortly. When it comes to PPE, chemicals, first aid stuff. This is a checklist I've given you guys. So under your first aid program, this will make it a little bit easier related to cleanup and spills. Think about that. If I have blood or other potentially infectious material, you guys are like, what's that? Cough, urine, feces, sweat, tears, vomit, all those other bodily fluids potentially could have blood in it. But now, again, if we're talking about a respiratory illness here with a pandemic, those fluids, you need to treat them as such that we are really protecting ourselves when we're cleaning up those spills. So do you have a third party that's cleaning that up? Are you guys cleaning it up? Do you have a plan around what you want your third party to do? Do you have a plan around what you're going to do? Make sure that you guys have kind of walked through these conversations with your team. So if you're the control plan coordinator and you're on here by yourself and you didn't bring anyone else to this webinar, you probably already know at this point that you need to go find someone else in your company that's going to help you so that you can talk this out and walk this through the pieces and the parts. In the sign section of your control plan, you need to have wayfinding. What direction do you want them to move? Aisles, alleyways, do not enter, walk in this door, don't come in that door. You need to have hand washing signs. Not only do you want them to wash their hands, you got to put posters up that teach them how to hand wash, how long you want them to hand wash. You need to have mask signs up, like PPE is required. If you're in a retail environment, no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. So you need to put postings everywhere. What do you want your customers, clients, and vendors to do? What do you want your employees to do? Do you have a screening process? I tell all my clients to put a one-page poster up at the door and entranceway that asks all these questions. Have you traveled outside the United States? Have you traveled outside of New England? Have you been in contact with anyone with COVID-19? Have you tested positive, or do you have any symptoms of flu-like or the signs and symptoms of COVID-19? Have you, I drew a blank. I ask all these questions. Okay. Oh, do you have a fever? Have you had a temperature in the last 3 days of 100 or higher? By the way, did you hear what I just said? 100 or higher. Originally, the CDC's recommendations were that we do it at 100.4. In the state of Massachusetts, they made it stricter than the CDC guidelines. So you can't have all of your documents and your temperature checking. For all of you who are doing temperature checking right now, if you're doing it at 100.4, you now need to change your plan. It needs to be at 100.0. So at 100.1, you're sending people home. So make sure you guys look that up and you're familiar with that. The other kinds of signs that you need to have also include obviously the social distancing piece, but you also want to have occupancy limitations. Only so many people in the kitchen, only so many people in the conference room, only so many people allowed in your lobby. Take chairs away, musical chairs. If there's only 6 chairs in the room, don't line up the other 6 against the wall because they'll just pull them up to the table. Get those other 6 completely out of that room so you can only sit down 6 people. Make sure that you have postings all over the place related to that. We do not encourage people to wear gloves unless you are in healthcare. Wearing gloves and touching your face, you still get COVID-19. Having no gloves and touching your face, you still could get COVID-19. Coughing and sneezing into your gloves and wiping your face, you could get COVID-19. Coughing and sneezing into your hands, you could still. So we don't encourage you guys to wear gloves unless you're disinfecting. You need to look at the chemicals and read the safety data sheets. And you need to know if your employees have to be wearing gloves. Now, for a lot of you small businesses, you never did hazardous communications or worried about hazardous chemicals in your facility, but you all got bleach and you all have ammonia and you all have isopropyl alcohol now in your buildings. And all 3 of those things require safety data sheets and training to your employees. Not to mention isopropyl alcohol and hand sanitizer are flammable. So depending on how many gallon jugs you have on your property, you might actually need a flammable cabinet. So make sure that you understand the rules associated with some of the choices that you guys are making. Now, under the multi-employer work site, this is who's coming on your property. If you let the UPS guy and let the FedEx guy and let the postal person come onto your property, use your bathrooms, not wear a mask, touch everything, the vending machine guys filling up the vending machines, hanging out in the kitchen area, breaking the rules on how many people can be in there, not washing his hands, not wearing a mask, the HVAC guy, the landlord people, if you're letting them all come in your building and they're not following rules, they should follow your rules or you should approve their own. So if they have their own program, then you can approve that. But if you let them into your building and they put your employees at risk, you can be held accountable and get in trouble for what you let other people do in your space because it put your employees at risk. If you're hiring a third party to do the cleaning for you, I need you to have a real conversation with that cleaning company. Like, what chemicals do you bring in my building? Where are the safety data sheets? What mops and buckets are you using? How are you drying those out so they don't stay wet and fester with bacteria and viruses? How has your team been trained? What are they using for PPE in my building, right? You want to make sure that the people that you're hiring are following and complying the same guidelines that you expect of your employees. Even better is if you can get the cleaning company to show up when your employees aren't there, you decrease your risk significantly because your employees aren't there and they're doing the cleaning. And now that owner of that company just has to be worried about them doing the wrong thing to each other and not your employees. But You can no longer just kind of do the old handshake and assume that someone is going to do the right thing for you and do a good job. You actually have to have a plan in place, and ask questions. You can decide whether or not you're going to let the truck driver and the people who are, mail people, delivery people, where are they dropping off those packages? Are you going to let them use your bathroom or not? If they come into your building, are you going to make them put a mask on while they're walking the transition area? Are you accepting vending machine, work right now? Again, remember I said administrative controls? These are all the rules that you get to put in place in your building. I suggest that you use this pre-qualifying. This is not pre-screening. This is pre-qualifying. If you're going to hire me to do a job for your company and I'm going to come into your building when employees are there or not, because your HVAC guy and your cleaning company, if they do something where the air quality is stale and stagnant or compromised and your employees come in on Monday and everyone gets sick on Mondays from something that your HVAC guy did or your cleaning company did, you're still going to end up with people are sick going to the hospital, and it's going to end up on your, OSHA recordables. So you want to make sure, again, pre-qualifying, hire companies that have not had any problems with OSHA. You can look on the OSHA website. Hire them and ask them for copies of their professional licenses. You'd be surprised how many people don't ever ask me for proof of my safety licenses. They never ask for a copy of my safety license. They never check to see if they've expired. They just assume I must have one of those faces that I'm a good person doing the right thing. You guys need to check licenses. Make sure the electrician's license has the electrician's license, right? The welding guy, the hot work person, he still has the welding and the hot work permits. Make sure that they're carrying the certifications that you expect them to carry. They have to have training records. If you're putting someone on your roof, make sure they have training records that say they've trained the people to be on a roof. We're in HAZCOM. We're in COVID-19 pandemic. Your cleaning company better have proof of hazardous communications training, safety data sheet training, personal protective on and off training. Like, they need to know how that stuff is working. You want to see if they have a control plan. Did they write one for their employees to keep their employees safe when they come into your building? Safety data sheets, we talked about that. Insurance. So the only thing that people typically ask me for is a copy of my insurance and a W-9. And some companies don't even ask for my insurance. They just ask for a W-9. If you're asking for my insurance, I would just say this to you. I tell all of you this stuff because it happens. It's real stuff. If you ask my insurance certificate and you let me email it to you, you have no idea if I forged it or if it's expired. But if you ask me to get my agent to send it to you, now you know it's legit and it's authorized and it's not expired and you're covered. And if you ask to be an additionally insured, although I'm not an attorney, I don't play one, and I'm not an HR person, and I don't play one on TV, I would encourage you to find out what having someone named as an additionally insured means to protect you. Housekeeping. Now, this is a big category. In Massachusetts, they put 4 major categories up: social distancing, hygiene protocols, staffing and operations, and disinfecting and cleaning, which is housekeeping. So here are some of the things that you first need to do. Number 1, do you all have an EPA approved disinfecting agent that kills COVID-19 in your building? Because if you're cleaning with chemicals that aren't approved to kill COVID-19, what are you doing? So you've got to make sure, first of all, they're EPA approved. You got to go to the list N as in Nancy, and look them up. They also list some out. They don't list everything up, but you can go to the N list and you can verify that yours is. Some of the products that you guys would expect to use, like Clorox bleaches and Lysols, of course they are on the list, but they're really hard to get to, or you might have to keep changing out the brand or changing out the kind. Lavender versus lemon versus no scent at all. Believe it or not, in the business world, in corporate America, the fact that there's a lemon versus lavender makes a difference. Why? That means the chemical composition is different. So that's where your safety data sheets come into play. You have to have the right safety data sheet for the right chemical. So for all of you who are just using these Clorox wipes for your office staff, and you don't have high risks related to chemicals and stuff, but you're using this, you still have to get a safety data sheet for this. And I got the, let's see, mine is lemon scented. So I need to have the safety data sheet for lemon in my building so that my employees can read it if they're worried about getting sick or injured, because you're now using bleach. Bleach, even though you guys use it at home and your mom and your grandmother always use it, it is toxic. It can kill you. It is a hazardous chemical. And now that you're using it in your workplace and you're asking all of your employees to wipe down their own stations using Clorox bleach, you have rules to follow now. You have to know what those are. This is a snapshot of everything you have to do related to employees touching chemicals. So whoever it is that you're asking to clean the bathrooms, clean the common areas, clean the doorknobs, handles, clean their own desks off, clean the printer off, clean off their workstation for the next shift, whoever you're asking to do the cleaning, you have to make sure that they've been trained in those chemicals. They have the right personal protective equipment. They know how to put them on and take them off, that they're hand washing after. They know the risks associated with breathing it in, getting it on the skin, getting it in their eyes. Where is it stored? What can it be stored next to? True or false? Can you put ammonia and bleach next to each other under the kitchen cabinet? Now at home, you probably have ammonia and bleach together. In the workplace, we can't store ammonia and bleach next to each other. If you uncap ammonia and uncap bleach and you're in the same space, worst of all, if you mix it into the yellow to do mopping of the floor, that is a toxic, will kill you gas. Okay, so we need to understand that household chemicals, when you bring them into a commercial application, there are risks associated with it. You got to make sure that you guys are covering it. The other thing is, you guys probably are buying big gallon-sized jugs of, let's say, the bleach or whatever chemical you can get a hold of, and then you pour it into smaller bottles and spread it out all over your building. That's okay, but what have we done to train the person who's pouring them into the smaller containers? They have to be protected, especially their eyes. And then when you put these, look in the top left-hand corner here, this picture, that you can't see them, but it gives you the illusion that those bottles aren't labeled. You have to make sure that every bottle that you put out in your workplace is labeled with correct and appropriate information. The name of the chemical, hazardous statements, pictures on it. So there's rules. That's called hazardous communication. And so the pictograms that you see on my screen right now down the bottom left are pictures, are symbols that you'll see that'll be right on top of, let me find the symbol. Let's see if this one has a symbol on it. This came right from the manufacturer. This one doesn't have the symbols on it. It's a manufacturer's label, so I don't have to switch it. If I were to make this go into a smaller container, then I would have to. But all the hazardous statements are right here on it. And more importantly, did you know that you using Clorox bleach, these wipes, when you wipe it on the surface, you need to let it air dry 60 seconds. If you are wiping and drying with a paper towel, you're not killing COVID-19. You got to read the directions on how long. Most chemicals right now for killing COVID-19, the average wet time on a surface in order for it to kill the COVID-19 is 2 to 3 minutes. Can you imagine wiping something down or spraying something down and having to wait 2 to 3 minutes before you can wipe it off? And in that case, it's probably already what? Dry, so you have to keep reapplying it. Understand how to use your chemicals. You might be using a lot of chemical because you have to keep it wet for 2 to 3 minutes before you can even wipe it off. So again, understanding what you guys are getting, have questions, read the labels, look at the safety data sheets. Under sanitation, well, this is your bathrooms. So I have some companies that aren't opening all their bathrooms because they don't want to clean all their bathrooms. So you got to know the rules on how many bathrooms you have to have open and available. I have some employers who are not letting anyone from outside the work, visitors, guests, you know, the UPS guy, drivers of the 18-wheeler dropping off raw material, they cannot use their bathrooms. Some people have porta johns outside in their parking lot for those individuals and have a third party clean it. Some people don't. You have to have things in your bathroom, like, do we have disposable paper towels? Do we have those air blower things? Do we have automated rinse? You know, you put your hands under the water, automatically starts. Are the toilets automatically flush? Is the toilet seat cover on? Do I have to keep lifting the cover up and down, right? Just get rid of the cover so I stop touching it and everyone else stops touching it. Are your doors automatic? Do the doors stay open? Do they stay closed? Are they fire doors? Like, everything related to decrease touching, decrease contact. Maybe your urinals, you have 3 urinals. Block off the urinal in the middle. We can't have 3 guys standing shoulder to shoulder. Put a rule outside that says only 2 guys in the bathroom allowed at a time. You've got to go through that upside down triangle and put all these rules in place for social distancing and decreasing contact among your employees. On the trash side of things, yeah, we got to talk about trash. Who's getting rid of it? So if you're a smaller company, you're probably you're filling up your trash can by your desk, and ultimately you're the one that takes it out. Or you might have someone who comes through your building, or you might have a third party doing it. Whoever's doing your trash, we still have to have rules around trash. It can't overflow. At 3/4 full, someone's got to be tying that bag up and getting rid of it and putting a new one in. I encourage you guys to use liners. The picture in the middle with the banana peel, there's no liner in that. So that means what? We have to disinfect in that container. If you have liners in it, it cuts down on how much cleaning we have to do related to containers. I mean, because how we have to guarantee that the same container goes back to the same person if we're not disinfecting it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. Do we want someone pushing the barrel through the whole entire place with open trash? I don't know. Is there a better way to do that? Are we recycling in our kitchen right now? Do you want me to drink a soda can with my mouth and leave it in there and have everyone else add theirs? Are we doing recycling right now or not? You have to decide how trash is going to function in your facility. And remember, anyone who's taking out the trash, if they're your employee, they're at risk for bloodborne pathogens and other potentially infectious material. They need to have a hepatitis B vaccination. They should be wearing gloves. They shouldn't be touching it. And as soon as they get that trash taken care of, they should be washing their hands. Yes, you should be telling your employees how often to wash their hands. After touching trash, after coughing and sneezing, after touching a pet, after coming out of the bathroom, before and after a meal, once you enter a building. You should be spelling this out for them. Then we get into PPE. So this is personal protective pieces of equipment. Well, first of all, we know that you guys have a supply chain challenge, probably. Everyone can be wearing a mask. A mask being a face covering. That means all your employees can bring in their own face coverings. There are rules on the face coverings. The CDC expects it to cover your nose and your chin. That means scarves and bandanas are out. They expect it to be secured, either the back of your head or around your ears, so that basically if I cough and sneeze, it's contained in this mask as much as we possibly can get it to contain. The other thing is your supply chains. You guys are spending a lot of money right now on equipment and resources. So we want you to find better relationships. Again, this isn't going to go away anytime soon. You're going to need to keep masks on for a while. When you go to put a mask on, I got to see if I can get it over my headset. Secure it. Hold on. All right, we got it. See this space up here? Look at my nose. See that space? That's not how you wear a mask. You need to seal that mask down and around your nose. So when you're giving disposable masks out to your employees, you got to teach them that that's the way you do it. And it's going to come underneath your knee. If your employees are walking around with masks like this, it's defeating the whole entire purpose. Okay? It's to keep cough, spit, sneeze, drool off of your stuff and out of the air. Okay? So that's what the masks are supposed to be doing. You need to understand when you have to be wearing the masks. In office settings, if you're sitting still, you're 6 feet away from someone, you're allowed to take the masks off. If you're in your own space, you're allowed to take the masks off. When you get up and start moving in transitions, you're not allowed, you have to have a mask on. Your masks, your face coverings, they have to be washed every night. So you can't have the same face covering for a week. That's like wearing your same dirty underwear for a week. You got to take that mask off. You got to wash it. So you can expect your employees to have 2 face coverings, one today, one tomorrow. Alternate, wash those, keep those clean. And if they don't have one or they forget it, then you've got to have those disposable ones available to them, because we can't let people come to work who don't have face coverings right now in the state of Massachusetts. So you've got to have the right PPE in place. You need to train them in it, show them how to put it on, show them how to take it off, show them where they can get a new one. You got to tell them how often to clean it. If they're disposables, you got to tell them to get rid of it and put a new one on, right? So you need to make sure that you put all this into play as it relates to PPE. Now, the mask, these N95 respirators, if you have these in your building and you are not a dentist or a healthcare provider, and I mean a healthcare provider treating COVID patients. If you're a PT and OT, a physical therapy, a social work, a school system, I don't want to see N95s. Only dentist offices and frontline medical people who are treating COVID-19. If you have an N95 respirator, this is a respirator, not a mask, in your building, and you're letting your employees wear these, and they have not been medically cleared or fit tested, you are breaking one of OSHA's biggest standards with respiratory protection. So you guys need to understand the difference between an N95 mask and a disposable mask and a face covering. They are not the same. So let's ask questions. If you guys think that you have N95 masks and it will say N95 on it or KN95 on it, if you've been getting them from China, you need to know what the requirements are around those. For people who can't wear face masks because they have a medical condition or it's unsafe to do so, because in some of the manufacturing world, wearing them is unsafe to do so, we go and I just wanted to see the poll. All right, so most of you are in the middle. I'm good with that. On day one, if most of you are in the middle with understanding where you're at, this is awesome. And those of you who are rock solid, that's even better. Because after these 3 webinars come to play, you guys will be in great position. But in terms of the face masks and how you're using them, again, know the difference between them. How do I access them? If I can't wear it for medical conditions, you should be giving people face shields. So learn and understand what a face shield is. If we're going to be less than 6 feet and I can't wear a mask, how are you going to protect each other? Okay. So use that. And then gloves. The thing about gloves, you guys, I could cough and spit in my hands, and I could wear gloves and still cough and spit in my hands. Wearing gloves does not protect you from COVID. Washing your hands and using hand sanitizer protects you from COVID. This is great for disinfecting so chemicals aren't getting absorbed through your skin. This is great because you're carrying trash out and you don't want nasty stuff touching your hands, okay? Then you take these off and you go what? Wash your hands. But we're not wearing them every day to protect us against COVID-19, okay?
Hey, Darcy.
Yes.
Just want to let you know we have a couple minutes left, so if everybody's okay, if they just can hang on just a couple more minutes longer so that you can get through everything, because I know this is important to them. And then if there are any Q&As, if people just want to start loading them into the Q&A, and we can try and get through them as well. If everybody can, what do you think about an extra maybe 10-15 minutes?
Yep, this is the last slide. This is
Awesome.
telling about training. Okay, so you guys, we talked about that upside down triangle, and we've been talking to you about all these areas that you have to look at and all the changes that you need to be making. Engineering, administration, posting signs, adding the PPE. So once you get through all that in every single department, right, look at every section of your building, how it operates, shipping, receiving, office staff, reception area, visitors, vendors, conference rooms, travel. You got to look at all of that. Then you have to say, oh, we got to train our staff in it. So on the left-hand side is all the new training that you're required to do in the state of Massachusetts. And on the right-hand side is all of the retraining that you need to do because of all your operational changes. So you should, as a company with 1 employee or more, be doing this training on the right-hand side. If you haven't done it before, now's a great time to do it and add in all your COVID-related changes. If you've been doing the stuff on the right, and even if you already trained your people in it in January and February, you weren't talking about the pandemic in January and February, you'll have to revisit these topics and do a new training as it relates to the changes in your COVID plan. Here's a list for you. You're going to have this. This is kind of a checkoff list of what you need, best practices, and regulation all kind of compiled into one, talking about the OSHA standards and this pandemic that we're in, combining it together. What's the paper that you should have into play? And so here is the list that you guys can go through. And what you do is just print this off and be like, got it, got it, got it. Ooh, missing, I didn't know that. And it will help you get up to speed. So Haley, as of now, I am done giving them the quick overview of all the chapters of their control plan. And they should all kind of feel, again, like that 1, 3, 5. It sounded like majority was in the 3, and we had some people that were in the 5 category already as it relates to the overview that we've given them along the way. So I'm pretty excited about that. You guys, this slide up in front of you is awesome. It's brilliant. It's amazing that we can even suggest this to you. So you If you need help with getting your pandemic control plan written, if you need consulting, if you have a blank page and you need us to help you start it, if you want us to audit and edit it, update it and fix it, we have programs now designed just to do that for you and help you in other areas. But that's not, I mean, you knew that, right? You knew that we'd obviously be able to help you. Here's the bigger piece. The bigger piece is there's a grant, G-R-A-N-T, in the pandemic world going on right now for small businesses like you should be jumping up and down and be like, that's why I stood in this webinar for the last hour, because I didn't know that grant existed. There is funding available to help you guys get through this when it relates to writing documentation and training. If you are like, oh my gosh, I need to know about this, you need to reach out to Haley and the team, and they will walk you through how you get funding to help you during this pandemic. So Haley, back to you.
Yeah, so thank you everyone today. I didn't get any Q&A, and usually on the first day we don't get a lot of Q&A because it's a lot of just retaining and trying to keep up with Darcy and getting the information that's important. A lot of screenshotting, hopefully, that went on throughout the day. But we do have a Q&A. Let's see. So can you use airless paint sprayer with disinfectant instead of an electrostatic spray gun? That's a great question.
Yep, it is. So I have to ask a question with a question, sadly, though. So if the manufacturer of that paint gun says that you can, then that's the first checkbox, right? So the first checkbox is, does the manufacturer allow you to do that? Yes or no? Then from there, then you've got to go to the safety data sheet. And so what happens now when you take that chemical and you're spraying it? What are the rules? What are the respiratory challenges associated with it? What's the PPE that has to be put in place with it? Is there flammability issues? Can we spray it through our whole building? And then the next part I'm going to ask you when you're doing that, I was going to say, hey, what's your ventilation? Are we opening doors? Are we opening windows? Do we have HVAC filters in place? So now that we're using the spray in the air, does it set? I mean, there's a million questions with the question. So the first place you have to start with is, if the manufacturer lets you use that piece of equipment to spray a chemical out instead of using paint, then the answer is yes, take the next step. If the manufacturer says no, then nope, you got to buy a piece of equipment designed specifically for spraying on chemicals.
All right, so that is it for questions, but I will, I'm going to piggyback on what Darcy had stated about the grants and knowing that with MassMEP, in the month of August, actually at the end of August and into September, we do a more in-depth training that Darcy does with us on the control plan. So it's very specific and it's very detailed. It is run through the Small Business Direct Access Program. So for those of you that are small businesses, 100 employees or less, in the chat, I put the first link, and the link is through the Commonwealth Corp. So if you go through the Commonwealth, you can get registered with them. And once you're registered with the Commonwealth, you can attend any of the Small Business Direct Access trainings, and it will be at no cost to your company. And right now, with what's available with training such as this training with Darcy, it is much more in depth. It helps you facilitate, understand, write, basically from nuts to bolts on your control plan when returning in this situation that we're in right now. Underneath that link, I then put the link in to register for our training. And again, you do have to be registered with the Small Business Direct Access Program in order to be able to attend our training at no cost. As long as you're under 100 employees, you have a valid certificate of good standing. It's a great opportunity. And there are plenty of other trainings in there as well that are available. But right now, if you're on this webinar, it's probably for a good purpose that you also want to enter and be a part of our training that we're going to do at the end. So, Carol, thank you, Carol. She said this information has been absolutely wonderful. Looking forward to your next 2 sessions. So thank you so much. But yeah, everyone, thank you so much for attending today. And the link that you use to enter the webinar this afternoon, you'll be able to use the same link again tomorrow afternoon. And tomorrow afternoon will be we'll deep dive right into it with Darcy. We'll get started right at 1 o'clock. So if everybody can enter a little bit earlier, I don't know. I usually would tell everybody to bring snacks, but I think when you're in this situation with Darcy, you need to have your hands ready at your mouse. And you're, depending on what your shortcuts are to do screenshots, be ready to go. So she's quick, but it's extremely useful information. So she's trained us at MassMEP, and we are following pretty much every single one of these protocols that she has brought to our attention as well. So thanks everyone, and we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow afternoon. I would say same bat time, same bat channel. We'll see you at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon for episode 2.